This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. This episode is sponsored by C-School, the online school for creativity training. If you'd like to unleash your creative potential and access a free Creativity Blueprint training series, then just head over to c.school. That's www.c.school for your free training series. In this episode, I speak with Cathy Fyock, and we talk about why you should write a book, the writer's pledge, and your ideal reader. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Cathy Fyock. Cathy is the Business Book Strategist who works with professionals and thought leaders who want to write a book as a business development strategy. She is the author of 8 books, including On Your Mark, From First Word to First Draft in 6 weeks, and Blog to Book. She has helped more than 100 professionals become published authors, and it's my great pleasure to have her on the show today. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you so much, James. It's great to be here.
So share with everyone what's going on in your world just now.
Well, gosh, it's been really busy. I think we have about 5 authors whose books are coming out this month, and that's always exciting. It's sort of like I feel like we're giving birth. And I was talking with an editor once, and she said, "I feel like these books are my nieces and nephews, not really children, but nieces and nephews." And I really identify with that.
So, just for people that don't know, how long does that process generally take? Going from someone that's initially approaches you to work with them on their book from it kind of hitting the shelves?
Well, the writing process can take as little as 6 weeks. Usually it takes a little longer than that because primarily I'm working with busy professionals who are speaking, who are consulting, who are coaching, who are doing other things. And so they're squeezing in time to write their books in the middle of all of that. So it usually takes a little longer to write it. And then once we have the draft manuscript, it takes as little as a month or 2 to get it out there in the marketplace.
And for yourself, where did this love of writing and publishing start? Where did it all begin for you?
Well, it's interesting because you say love of writing, and I really don't have a love of writing.
That's interesting. So you see it as
Yes.
a means to an end, or you see it as a part of a bigger, a bigger strategy that you have.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't really like writing, but I love what writing does for my business, and I love what writing does for my thinking about my topic. It gives me such clarity. It gives me focus. It gives me depth of understanding. Writing does all of that for me. So I'm not crazy about the writing process per se, but I do love having written, and I love having a book.
And is that because I know you're a CSP, a certified speaking professional? You keynote in lots of different places as well. Is that because your primary way that you love to communicate is first and foremost is speaking your ideas and communicating in that form?
Absolutely. I love to speak. I love to speak in front of groups. I love to speak one-on-one. I love to communicate in that way. So writing to me it's never been natural. I never had a teacher that applauded my writing efforts. I never had a teacher or instructor or professor say, "Oh, you should take your writing and go someplace with this." So I've sort of had to write in almost an attempt to overcome some of those negative messages that have been going on in my head, like, you can't really write, and who do you think you are to write a book, and all of that, which I think makes me a better writing coach, because I think that when people say, "Oh, you've written 8 books and you've done all of this writing," they assume that you like to write. And I think that's the first thing, is I get it. I don't really like to write, but I love the product of writing.
So I guess that could relate not just to speakers who they want to kind of get their ideas out to maybe in a different platform and a wider platform as well, but also maybe service professionals if you have a business, or if you're a CEO of an organization and you want to use it as a way of kind of almost like brand advocacy.
Absolutely. The whole content is king. Getting your brand, your message out there via content is one of the most powerful marketing strategies and branding strategies we have. So that's what having a book or a blog or having written articles, all of those writing products will help you grow your business. So I primarily work with speakers, consultants, business professionals who know that letting the world know about their area of expertise will help them build and grow their business.
So in the speaking world, we often hear this idea that, a book is a business card, that it's like one of the best things you can do in terms of authority, that word authority coming from author, I guess. So
Yes.
It's great from that perspective, but then also on the back end of your business where maybe you're going to speak at a conference and then it's an additional way to make some additional money or add additional value there as well. Is that still the case? Now we're talking a lot about online and online courses and membership programs and things. Is the book still a key thing that any speaker or anyone that's kind of going up onto stages should have?
A book is magical. I laugh with this with my authors all the time. It's like, what is it with the book? But there is some magic that having written a book. I don't know if it's because sort of in the back of everyone's head, we have this thought of writing a book, and I think there is something to that. And so having written the book, we have that expression, she wrote the book on that, or he wrote the book on that. There's something to that. So it's very powerful and can give you much more credibility. It can open doors. It can give you access to speaking engagements, to high-end consulting opportunities, just because you have written the book on it.
I was watching it. There was a film on the other night, and it was portraying a writer, and it was this very lovely scene in the south of France where he's sitting there with his typewriter, looking at all these lovely mountains and hillsides, and with a glass of wine there, and the weather's lovely, and he was sitting outside writing, and inspiration was coming to him. Is that the daily life of other writers that you work with?
Oh, if only. We would all love to go away to a beautiful beach resort or mountain resort, and but the reality is we most all of us have jobs, we have busy, crazy lives, so we have to squeeze writing in and then where we can. Now, I do like writing. If I go away on a trip, on vacation, I find that writing that's a really great place to do writing. But for most of us, we need to work it into our daily routine and have a daily routine of writing, or a regular routine of writing, so that it becomes natural. And the analogy I like to use is that we would never think about going to run a marathon, and we would just say, okay, today's the day, I'm going to run the marathon, without having done a lot of training, a lot of prep work along the way. Similarly, with writing a book, you don't just, start in one day and you're going to just tackle it. No, it's a matter of training. So of learning your best time of day to write, learning your best place, figuring out your strategy plan for your book, the thesis, the purpose, the target audience, the outline. Doing all of this prep work is really critical in order to let you move forward and get the book done.
There was an interview the other day with Julia Cameron. She was talking about how those little voices that you have when you come up with you think I'd like to do this, but then there's little maybe it's creative confidence. Let's call it that. It kind of gets dinged, and those little voices that say, well, you're too young to write, you're too old to write. Someone's already written it, but better. is one of the ones. When you start working with some of the authors that you work with, you're coaching them. What do you find are the most kind of common fears that they have, and how do you kind of help them allay some of those fears?
Well, first of all, every single writer that I work with has some fears and concerns. They have that negative voice in their head that's saying, I can't believe you're wasting your time writing this book, or don't you know that there's somebody else over here who's already written a book on this, or I can't believe you think you can write. So, I mean, that is something I have to deal with every single author. So one of the things I came up with is my writer's pledge. I was talking with one of my authors, and she was telling me that she and her grandson had developed this pledge together. And it was a pledge about how they were going to approach the day with positive energy and that sort of thing. And I thought, I think writers need a pledge. So if it's all right, I'll share it with you here.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Because I share it with all of my coaching clients. And in fact, once I wrote this, I said, what do you want to do with this? And they said, we need to start each of our coaching calls by reciting together the writer's pledge. So it's become our tradition now. So I'll share it with you here. I pledge that I will use my power to make today a fantastic day. I will block writing time on my calendar, and I will honor that time commitment and hold it as sacred creative time. I pledge that I will not allow my negative voice to guide my thinking or stop my creative process. I will surround myself with people who love me and support my writing. I pledge to tell my story, to share my experiences with authenticity and without apology. I know that in telling my story, I can provide others with the gifts of hope, wisdom, and joy. I pledge that I will continue to work so that I gain clarity and focus for my readers, audiences, and clients. Then I can continue to make the world a better place, one word at a time.
That's beautiful. That is lovely. So you mentioned that you kind of start when you're doing your coaching, but I know as well you kind of do masterminds where you bring a number of different kind of authors together as well. What does that work like? Because I'm thinking, that relationship between the coach and the coachee, the author is obviously quite a personal one, because you're dealing with confidence issues and other things, and just technical things about writing as well. What does the mastermind do that the one-on-one coaching doesn't do?
I love the group experience, the mastermind experience, and I have two different groups. One is for those folks who are in the writing stage and are getting their writing done. And then I have an author mastermind group for folks who are almost done or are done with their manuscript, and they might be close to publishing, or they maybe have already published. And we bring those folks together because what I have found is that authors, the life of an author is very solitary and can be very lonely. And you get into your cave, and you start, the negative voice starts talking to you. And it's really important to be surrounded with people who are like-minded individuals who can share their experiences, share their concerns. So we talk about the fact that in our writers group, this negative voice comes to us all the time. And just because we've defeated the negative voice, and by the way, we call the negative voice the bitch.
So it's usually feminine then.
Yes, we will. We've just called it that. We tried to think of some other name for it, but we just call it the bitch. And we have all agreed that the bitch will come back again and again and again. So it's figuring out how we continue to get that negative thinking out of our way so that we can move forward with our writing. And what might work for me may not work for another writer, but another author's solution and the way they deal with that negative voice may be something that works for someone else. So that's why we share best practices, tips, and ideas, because we all write differently. We approach writing differently. Different things work for each of us. So I love the community of writing and the power that brings to each of us.
And for yourself as a writer and also a speaker as well, where do you go for inspiration? How do your new ideas come about, and how do you go about developing those concepts or ideas?
Well, it's interesting that most of my ideas lately have come from my clients. So, for example, the other day I got a call from one of my authors. His book he's done the first draft, but he's getting it tightened up. He's working with his editorial board and cleaning up some things. But he has a speaking engagement. And he says, okay, Cathy, so I have this opportunity. I'd like to promote the book, but I'm not sure how much I can do. What advice could you give me about my presentation? I said, that's a great question. And I thought, anytime I say to a client, that's a great question, I know that that's a great blog post or that's a great topic, because that's something that everybody is dealing with. If one person is dealing with it, then probably we're all at some point dealing with that same topic. So I wrote a blog post about what to do when your book isn't quite done, but you have speaking engagements or have opportunities to get out in the marketplace and talk about it. What are some things that you can and should do? So I listen to my clients very carefully, and when they ask me a great question, I say, that's a topic for my next blog post.
And that very first book that you wrote, I mean, what held you back from writing that book? Do you think you could have written that book earlier, or did it take a certain amount of time to kind of come up with the ideas and think about those and develop those ideas? Or was there something emotional that was kind of holding you back from kind of writing it and publishing it?
Well, my very first book took way more than 6 weeks to write. Many of my books I have written in less than 6 weeks. But that first book, oh my goodness. I had a contract from a publisher. I had an advance check in my hand. I was so excited. I knew the book I wanted to write. I had it outlined. And every day my husband came home from work saying, okay, Cathy, have you started on your book yet? And I would say, I'm almost ready to start, almost ready. I'm clearing this off. I'm getting this done. A lot of productive procrastination that was going on there. And I thought, this is not like me. I am a go get 'em, get started, self-motivated kind of an individual. So what was holding me back? I had no idea. But about the same time, I started having this recurring nightmare. And the nightmare was that I was speaking for a group or maybe sitting around the table with my clients. And I would look down and realize, oh my gosh, I am not wearing clothes. I thought, this is disturbing. So I didn't think too much of it until I was traveling on business, and in the seat pocket in front of me was a Working Woman magazine. And so I flipped it open, and there was this big article on the dreams of executive women. So I thought, well, this will be interesting. What do executive women dream? Number one dream was the naked dream. And I thought, this is fascinating. And what it said was that executive women, when promoted to a position of authority, all of a sudden start to fear. Oh, I'm going to be found out. At the old imposter syndrome. People are going to see that I am, a mere mortal and not able to do all of these things. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but that's not me. I'm self-employed. I'm writing a book. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what is writing a book about? I thought, I am revealing for the world my level of incompetence. I am documenting for the world my level of incompetence. And once I came to that notion, I was able to write the book.
So it just took that mental, the ability to be able to say, I don't know it all, but I need to kind of put a stake in the ground and say, this is where I am now. This is kind of what I know, and this is what I want to share now.
Absolutely. So it's just getting over that fear of being found out. This is what I know. Well, this is what I know. And what was interesting at the time, my first book came out in 1990. There were no other books on the aging workforce, and that's what my book was about. So there may have been other people who knew more about it, but there was not one single book on that topic. So my book became the first book on that topic. And it's established me as an expert ever since that time.
And as you've kind of gone through your own creative journey, obviously you work with your clients and you've developed yourself as a writer and as a speaker and as a coach. Can you tell us maybe about a key insight or an aha moment in your life and your own creative journey?
I think it's about the notion of not editing. It is so important to separate the editing function from the creative function. One of the things I have learned is, I keep having this negative voice come into my head and say, this is not perfect writing, Cathy. You need to clean this up. You need to make this better. And what I am learning, I continue to learn, and I help my clients learn, is that we don't want to write perfectly. We just want to write. We will get it cleaned up later. Do we need editors? Absolutely, we need editors, but not to worry about the editing process until the writing is done.
I mean, it's one of the things that we teach here at C School as well, is about, stream, don't edit, or these are different parts of the brain that are having to work at different points as well. And as you say, it is so easy for that little voice to come in, which is very useful at a certain point in the process, but in the early stages is not going to be your best friend. No, absolutely your worst friend. So you have to tell that voice to go away, leave you alone. You're just going to get into the flow and let the writing happen. And then we clean it up and do something better later. I'll never forget one time when I co-authored a book with my mom, which was very, very fun. And we were working together at the time, and my practice was to write in the morning. And that morning, I can distinctly remember sitting at my desk at the keyboard thinking, this is crap. This is crap. What I am writing is so bad. And so when we went to lunch that day, she said, well, how's it coming, Cath? And I said, well, it's crap. It's really, really bad. And she goes, oh, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I said, no, it's really, really bad. We'll go back after lunch and we'll look at it. So after lunch, we went to the office. We pulled up what I had written. And you know what? It was not crap. It was actually pretty darn good. Now, did it need to be edited? Of course. Everything I write needs to be edited. I think anything anyone writes needs to be edited, needs to be tightened up, and the right word chosen, and all of that. But that happens later. So I think that is a wonderful example of the fact that we cannot listen to that negative voice. We need to just let it flow. So I'm guessing one of your superpowers is when the clients that you're working with, they have all this knowledge, this information in their heads. And it's like how you get that information out of their heads and onto the page as well. Is there anything when you're working with your clients that maybe surprises them about themselves in that process of like getting it from their head onto the page?
One of the most interesting things I have found lately is I used to do a writing exercise, and I love to do writing sprints, writing prompts where I give them a word or a picture, and they write about their topic, but as the picture or the word informs their topic. And in addition to these, I've done these letters, writing a letter to your reader, because it gets folks really in the right headspace to write, because it's not so much about the writer, it's more about meeting the needs of the reader. But one of the most powerful twists on this, and I just learned it by accident, I said, okay, instead of writing a letter today to your reader, let's write a letter from your reader and see how this informs your writing. And so I said, imagine you are your reader. Imagine you have the concerns, the problems, the pain that your targeted reader would have. Write that letter to you. And that was powerful for people because it got them out of their own heads and saying, this is what I need to tell my readers. This is what my reader needs to know. And instead, have them totally empathize and identify with the pain, the problems, the issues of their reader, which took them to a completely different place in their writing.
I love that exercise. In fact, it reminds me a little bit, I do exercise, a different type of exercise, but when I'm in research stage for a new online course or something I'm creating, I'll spend a lot of time on Amazon looking at the reviews of maybe 10 similar books related to that particular topic. And I love just going through all the reviews and just looking for those words or phrases in the voice of the person that's reviewing. So, and just how they say certain things, you can hear those things repeated time and time again, but you wouldn't necessarily say it in that way. but you hear that thing getting repeated time and time again. You think, oh, I should probably pay attention to that. That's obviously a common problem or a common challenge, or something that they found really amazing about the book, and the reason that they found the book so helpful in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this is why I really also encourage my clients to be on social media and start socializing some of the elements of their book, their topic, their issue, and getting in conversation with their readers or prospective readers. Because this gives you a wealth of information, because getting in the heads of your readers is probably one of the most effective things you can do as a good writer. And I think social media will allow us to do that if we engage in those kinds of conversations or dialogues with potential readers or clients in that way.
Now, as a writer and as a writer of a coach of writers, do you have any online resources or tools or mobile apps that you find really useful?
Well, one of the interesting things that I have found is that photography has really inspired both myself and my writing clients. I used to do writing prompts with just words, like your topic and a comedy routine, or your topic and a horror story. But I've started using photography as an interesting way. So I love to find free photography. So I love Pixabay.com, Pixabay.com, to inspire me with interesting pictures. And just recently I found a new website, Gratisography, Gratisography.com, and that has just a fun sort of wacky photographs that will inspire you to think in new and different ways. But other than that, I don't use a lot of apps. Some of my clients, of course, use Evernote and love it. Some use Scrivener. I like Word. I like the old-fashioned easy Word. I don't want to have to work and learn something new at this stage.
And we're talking about books and everything, obviously, in this entire conversation. And this is going to be especially hard, I can imagine, for you. But if you could recommend just one book to our listeners, and actually one record or one album to our listeners as well, what would those be?
Gosh, that's hard. Something that was immensely inspiring to me was Clarissa Pinkola Estes' book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. I love that book, and I just found it to be very inspiring for letting the creative part of me come out, because I have an interesting background, because I was a music major in college and never actually taught music except for a half a semester. So I have this very artistic background, but then I went into the business world, and that's where I stayed. So I think tapping into that creative spirit and allowing that to flourish has been really exciting for me. So that's the one book that I would recommend.
So as a music major, then, what would be the record? This might even be more difficult for you. What would be the record or the album
one
you'd recommend?
Record. Oh, man. Because maybe something sort of different to recommend. I love Samuel Barber. Samuel Barber, an American composer. His essays are just spectacular. Essay number 2 is just beautiful, and very American and very different. I love his work, so that's just my personal favorite.
Wonderful.
But that's hard to pick just one.
And we'll put links on those on the show notes as well for everyone, so you can go and check those out. So a final question for you, Cathy. Let's imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you had to start from scratch. So you have all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
Well, that's interesting, because in so many ways, that is my story. I was a human resources consultant until, I started this new business in January of 2014. And I really started like fresh in this new space as a book coach. And And I just decided I was going to go out and do it. And the way I did it was to write a book. Because up until then, I had been an author myself, but I had never been a coach, a book coach. And yet, by writing the book on how to write the book, I became positioned to move ahead in this space. And so the whole notion of writing a book to launch what's new for you, some new direction, a new focus, a book is so powerful.
Yeah.
And I love having demonstrated that and modeled that for many of my clients who are starting a new journey, or starting new businesses, or starting a consulting practice. A book is a fabulous way to do that.
So, Cathy, I'm guessing for those people that are listening just now who want to start that new journey, and maybe it's the speakers or the consultants or the business professionals in some way, or the musicians or artists, but they want to write that first book, what is the best way for them to learn more about you and your services and the other projects and programs you've got going on just now?
Well, thank you for asking that. Cathy at cathyfyock.com is my email. My website is cathyfyock.com. CATHYF as in Frank, YOCK, cathyfyock.com. And they can learn there about my coaching packages and the different services I offer, the books that I've written, as well as I have a hall of fame with all of my authors talking about their books and expressing how they have worked with me. So it's fun. I encourage everyone to visit me there. And for that matter, too, if anyone would like a copy of my Writer's Pledge, just send me an email and I'm happy to send that to you.
That's very kind of you to do that as well, Cathy. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your creative journey. And what I love about your story is also you're helping so many other people start a new creative journey for themselves. And this information, this knowledge, this wisdom that they already have, and help them kind of get it out onto the page and share it with the world. So thank you so much for coming on, and I wish you all the best and continued success in what you're doing.
Thank you so much, James.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.